this day of great celebration as you affirm your baptism and as you continue on your journey in faith and as you go to college and then as you go to the seminary. There are things you're going to learn along the way. Now, one of the things I learned in seminary, they taught us this the first quarter, was how to prepare a sermon. And what I like to do is I like to read the verses I've just read, usually in the beginning of the week. And I just let it kind of bubble up and down. Just to, God might be saying something that I haven't heard before. I may have seen something that I've never seen before. I just let it kind of soak in. But then, after I do that, then I usually talk to Pastor Karen about it, and we bat some ideas around, because it's always good to bat ideas around. She might have some insights that I didn't see, vice versa. We came across a couple yesterday, but I'm not going to use them today. They're not always good. We know how to discern. But I use something that's called a commentary. And there are a lot of commentaries, and they're written by scholars. And they'll go through the Bible. They'll go through passage after passage and really dig down deep into what these verses mean. They'll go through the Greek or the Hebrew translations and the possible translations. Like, for instance, sin. You know, we all know the word sin. Well, the Greek word is hamartia, or hamartia, which in Greek means to miss the mark. Now, isn't that an interesting way of looking at sin? To miss the mark. You want to aim, you want to get it right there, but somehow it just isn't going where you want it to go. That is one way of looking at sin, the Greek way of looking at sin. And then they'll give the historical background and the literary backgrounds and all sorts of information, more information that you can possibly handle in my brain anyway. So, but then they give you some reflections, and this is where I find helpful. And I have to say that for a long time, I have not been a big prayer. I have to confess to you, I don't pray a lot, which is kind of surprising coming from a pastor, right? But I'm also human, and the reason why I try to figure this out, why I don't like to pray that much. And part of it is what in the text we just read, that Jesus says, God already knows what we need, even before we ask. And it's like, yeah, right? So in the reflections, it says, point 3, many thoughtful people have pondered what we are really doing when we pray. If there is a God at all, doesn't this God already know everything we could possibly say in prayer? Yeah. Does prayer really change anything? Is it even possible to truly worship a God who can be swayed by our prayers? If there is a God at all, could this God be good if waiting to grant help or healing until we ask in the proper way? So what kind of God is this that he's not going to stop suffering unless we ask? He's just going to wait for us to do it. What kind of God is that? That's what they're asking here. How could prayer be significant if on many issues there are sincere people praying for opposite results? You're going to see that today, Super Bowl Sunday. The people in Boston are going to pray for one way, and the people in LA are going to pray for another way. And you always see this. You see this all the time. The winning team, they always say, it was the Lord that gave us this victory. But you never see the defeated team saying, you know who I blame? The Lord, because clearly the Lord was on their side today. Gets silly, doesn't it? But then I think, well, what does this prayer stuff mean? Well, they also come in with some insights too. And what they say, and what the scholar here is saying is that prayer is the language of confession. Not confessing our sins, but confessing something more deeply than that. It is a confession that we are totally dependent on God. Our power comes from the power of God. It's not power in prayer, like I have the power to pray and change God's mind. It is the power of God in the prayer, who is there and who has the power. If you've ever suffered from an addiction, for instance, and I hope you guys don't, but if you do, those of us who have suffered an addiction know exactly what they're talking about here. Because you get taken over by a power that you do not want. And it is a power that is going to take you down. And ain't going to let go. I don't care whether alcohol, drugs, whatever addiction. An addiction is something, you don't want to do it, but you're powerless to stop doing it. I come from a long line of alcoholics. My dad, my grandfather, his father, all the way to Eric the Red in Norway. I mean, it is one of the family things, you know. And we all know it, you know. And we've all been there in our family. And you get to a point where you have to either give up and say, God, I don't have any power anymore. I can't do this on my own. I have tried, but I keep destroying myself. I need you. I need you right now. I need your power. And fortunately, since 1935, there was something called Alcoholics Anonymous that started. And for those who have suffered, now there is hope. And I also have to say that I come from a long line of recovering people. I like to think that recovery is also a gift, a genetic gift perhaps. But I think the reason why I really didn't want to pray is because I don't want to be vulnerable. And that's what prayer is. You're vulnerable. You are saying to God, I need you. And in this culture of we have to be self-sufficient and independent and earn your success and don't show weakness, it's hard to say, I can't do it. I need help. Boy, those are tough words to say. I need help. I think those are three of the toughest words in our English language, actually. Yeah. And then Jesus, get this one. Boy, he doesn't make it easy. Then he's talking about the power of prayer, the power of God in prayer, and then he goes into forgiveness. You must forgive. Oh, really? All the time? Can't I just not forgive some people because they really don't deserve it? But here's the thing. And I was watching this movie, and if you guys, we'll do this in the high school youth, Carrie, just to make a note. We're going to watch this movie because it's really good. It's called Shadowlands, and it takes place. I mean, they filmed it in 1995 or something like that. Anyway, it's about C.S. Lewis. Now, C.S. Lewis was a great scholar, a tremendously learned man. He taught at both Cambridge and Oxford. And no one could beat him in a debate. He was that smart. And he was a professor of the humanities, and so he's read everything. And he lived with his brother, in a nice little cottage in a safe little town, taught in a safe Oxford University. He never risked anything in his life, but somehow he knew about suffering, and so he went on a lecture tour all over the place explaining the answers to why there is suffering. Until he met a woman, and despite himself, he fell in love with her at his advanced age of, 58. And she contracted cancer. And oh my, all of a sudden, he knew about love, and he was experiencing the suffering that goes with love, because suffering is a part of the deal. When you love, you are going to suffer at some point in time because of the loss that you will experience. But despite himself, the power of love was too great, and he fell in love with her. And when she was going through her cancer treatments, he went through the torments of hell. And in one scene, she goes into remission, and one of his friends, the vicar of the cathedral, says, "You have prayed so hard, Jack, and now God has answered your prayers." And Lewis says, "I don't pray to change God's mind. I pray because I can't help myself. I pray because I am helpless. I pray because the need to pray flows out of me all the time, waking or sleeping. It doesn't change God. It changes me." And that's it. Prayer doesn't change God. It changes us. It changes us when we open ourselves to the power of God and feel that power, and we will be changed. And I'll tell you in one very specific way. When you can pray to forgive your enemies, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. But you know what? If you can forgive your enemy, your enemies, they don't care whether you forgive them or not. They don't even know. But if you can't forgive, it's like this anger just keeps boiling inside you. But to forgive means I'm giving it over to God, and I don't have to live in that resentment anymore. And so that's what they tell us in AA. They say, if you have somebody, if somebody's really, pray for them. Sometimes the first prayer is, God, give them what they deserve. But pray every day for 30 days, 60 days, and you will notice how much you change. You notice how much you change and how much spiritually healthy you begin to feel. Jesus knew that. Jesus knew that. Prayer is central to our life in faith. It is central. And so I'll tell you, because I've read this week, I'm convinced. I'm convinced the power of God in prayer shapes us. And it shapes us for all of the days that we will move forward into. So you guys, all right? You listening? This is a good thing in your life of prayer as you are affirming your baptism today. Remember to pray to God every day that God will do what God will do for you and for all of the people that you will meet along the way. And that is a good thing. Right? Am I right? Good. If you didn't agree, I don't know if I could confirm you today. There's still a little time left. I'll tell you what. We were listening to their statements of faith today at 10 o'clock. Wow. You guys really, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. And we're looking forward, Carrie and I, and Karen, when she visits, she'll be visiting, to being with you guys in the high school youth group. and just having a good time and exploring this thing we call faith. All right? Amen.